I'd like to call our June 2022 board meeting to order. Declaration of a quorum, 6 members present, 1 absent. Welcome to the summer edition of school board meetings at CSISD. Welcome to the meeting of College Station Independent School District Board of Trustees. We were elected at large to represent the interests of our community and our state in educating our students. Our mission for our students in this district is success each life, each day, each hour. We adhere to all pertinent laws, policies, and procedures in posting agendas and conducting our meetings. The detailed agenda information was made available to us at least 72 hours in advance, and we've all come to this meeting informed and prepared. We've just completed a workshop meeting where we heard reports and discussed much of the information needed to make decisions in either this meeting or in upcoming meetings. This is a meeting of the 7 trustees in a public setting rather than a public meeting. As such, public comment is included on the agenda at a specific time and requires us to listen rather than take action so as to abide by the Open Meetings Act. We are pleased that you have taken the time this evening to join us. We are very proud of this school district and we thank you for your interest in and support of our students. That'll bring us to item C, recognitions. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Horak and board members. I'd invite Maria Sines forward. She's going to introduce our 3 bilingual summer school students that are going to lead us in our pledges and moment of silence this evening. Maria, come on up.
And we're gonna.
Okay. Hello, my name is Maria Sines.
Okay, my name is Silas.
Gracias. Espera un momentito.
I'm
Wait a minute. I'm the lead teacher for our ESL Bilingual Summer School, and these are 4 of our next year kindergarten students. And this is Paula Martinez. She's one of our instructors. And so we are going to introduce ourselves. What is your name? Remember?
My name is Sebastian Bonilla.
Awesome. Go with Ms. Martinez. Ven, madre. ¿Cómo te llamas?
Addie.
Okay. And this is Addie. Adelante. Addie. Baja la mano. ¿Cómo te llamas?
My name is Ariana.
Eso mero. ¿Cómo te llamas?
Me llamo Olivia Montano.
Okay. So right. You understand? Okay. So. Okay. Turn around. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one indivisible. Then we'll proceed with the moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give these guys a round of applause. Are you a picture of one?
All right, that will bring us to item C2. We'd like to recognize the artwork provided by the Bilingual Summer School and Enrichment Summer School at the back of the room and on the side of the room. They're on our right side here. Make sure you stop by before you leave and take a look at all the artists that we have in our district here, even in the summertime. So item D, board reports. Do we have any reports?
The District Education Improvement Council met virtually June 8th and reviewed the Every Student Succeeds Act, as well as the district-wide parent and family engagement plan.
May 18th, the day after our last meeting, the Strategic Design Committee got back together kind of a year after the initial work was done to review the progress over the year and talk about the steps moving forward for the next years, because as we all know, it's not a one-year deal with the strategic plan. And I think we'll see more, we've got some of that in transmittal, but we'll see more detail when we meet as a team of 8 in a couple of months. And then also, June 6th, the Education Foundation got to have their annual strategic planning retreat. We got to go to Big Shots Golf. They nicely supported us for a location there. But really, it was just a great time for all the members of that wonderful group to just talk about how we can keep up the great work that they do, how we continue to keep the community involved, supporting the district, and then continue to use that money efficiently and effectively throughout our district. So it was a great 3-hour retreat. So that happened a couple of weeks ago. That's it.
Anything else? All right, Superintendent update, Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Horak and board members. Just a handful of items. I just want to encourage folks that were not able to or in attendance at our budget workshop earlier this evening to take time and review and watch that. We'll have it posted tomorrow, but there's Ms. Strauss did a wonderful job presenting regarding the budget and proposed compensation consideration that will be coming up later in the regular meeting for the board's consideration. So just encourage folks to take the opportunity to watch that. There's some wonderful information regarding that item. Also, of course, later in the meeting, I just want to mention there's a construction purchase. This is the beginning of some of our CTE work in our facilities. They'll be for canopies at both of our high schools for consideration later with the regular meeting. And also, of course, an executive session, we'll have the opportunity to have our review our annual safety audit, which we do each June. Also, just kind of an update as we are in June, a lot going on, but as far as staffing, currently we have 19.5 teacher vacancies, 16 special ed, that's gen ed, 19.5 general education teacher vacancies, 16 special ed teacher vacancies as well. So relatively speaking, I can tell you from last year, April 1st through June 21st, we had hired 74 teaching positions. This year, April 1 through today, we're at 125. So there obviously is some transition and turnover as we and all school districts are encountering through the course of these times. So just wanted to provide the board with a little update on that from a staffing standpoint.
All right. That will bring us to item D2, consideration, discussion, possible action related to school board meeting schedule for the 2022-23 school year. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Horak. As you can see from Mr. Glenwinkle's memo, those are simply the dates for the school board meetings through the course of next school year. They continue to be on the third Tuesday of each month, workshop at 5, regular meeting at 7. The one exception would be Tuesday, December 13th, and that's because of the end of the semester and winter break that we'd be doing that on the second Tuesday. So we would be looking for the board's approval on this agenda item and setting the board meeting dates for the 22-23 school year.
I move to approve as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. Nolan, a second by Mr. Ben. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. All right. That will bring us to item E, hearing of citizens. Ms. Warren, is this what we have? Yes. Okay. So we have 3, and I need to read our public comments as it pertains to our regular meeting. During this time, public comments are welcome. The Open Meetings Act prevents us from responding to speakers regarding items not on the agenda. Comments related to items on the agenda may be discussed during deliberations on that specific agenda item. Please complete the note card and give it to the executive assistant. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Those needing an interpreter may have up to 6 minutes. Each person has 1 opportunity at the microphone regardless of minutes used. Unused minutes may not be accrued by another speaker. The executive assistant will time the comments and alert the president when time has expired. The board asks that those addressing the board refrain from derogatory comments. Our first card is Chris Field. Please come to the microphone. Yeah, this one here. Make sure it's on for you.
Thank you. My name is Chris Field, and I'm the father of 3 current students with another who will be in the district in 2 years. I also attended CSISD from K through 12. I'm going to speak directly tonight because I only have 3 minutes, but I believe we have the same goals, and I appreciate the current board and administration. I think we have a bit of a challenge before us, and it's going to take courage and guts to solve it, but I believe we can. Even with the bigger proposed raise we discussed tonight in the workshop, we'll still be behind comparison districts. When you look closer at those districts and realize 70% of them have a lower cost of living than us, that delta grows even larger. Even with tonight's proposed raise, which would come with an approved vote, our teachers will be paid 7% under the median of comparable districts when you factor in cost of living. 7% below the median is unacceptable for a district whose daily goal is excellence. If teacher salaries were SAT scores, we're about to improve ours to a 950. Most parents wouldn't be happy with that, and we shouldn't be either. Being average is not the goal, and we are less than average. I don't know of another industry where someone with a college degree can have 10 years of experience and make less than $50,000, or have 20 years of experience and make $60,000. But my biggest concern is that there's a $750 a month difference between a teacher with no experience and one with 20 years experience. The mentor makes $25 more a day than the mentee, which leads to another problem. Our experienced teachers are not being valued and appreciated. It's not just about the money, it's about asking them to do more. More new teacher mentoring, more department chairing, more committee leading, more clubs and organizations, more leadership, but the pay stays the same. The stipends equate to a couple bucks an hour at best, and teachers are leaving. I'm hiring for a position in one of my companies, and half my applicants are teachers. Who will be left to teach our children? An excellent educational system lifts up the entire community. Better jobs, appreciating housing, more companies choosing to come here. We've seen that in this city for decades. We are in very real danger of the opposite beginning to happen, and we must choose to be leaders rather than followers. If we expect excellence in the classroom, then we must treat our teachers as if we believe they are excellent. Better pay, better listening, more empathy, more care, and more concern. They must be seen and heard, which is only partially about compensation. I am who I am because of the teachers in my life. Everyone in this room could say the same. And so tonight I'm here for Mrs. Crawledge, Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Womack, Mrs. Anderson, Mrs. Hummel, Mrs. Sutherland, Mrs. Holscher, Mrs. Medlock, Mrs. Martinez, Coach Pryor, Mrs. Wellman. That's a teacher from every year I was in K through 12 in CSISD. I'll be 40 soon, and I can still recite them from memory. That's how much teachers matter, and that's why I'm here tonight.
Thank you. Our next card is from Russ Trider.
Howdy. I'll make this quick. My name is Russ Trider. I'm here to talk to you about the Texas School Marshal Program. I grew up here in CSISD as well. I returned here in 2018 after a 20-year military career. My daughter is a high school student here. I have another daughter who just graduated attending Texas A&M. My wife is a CSISD employee. I'm a 20-year retired military police combat vet, Navy senior chief. I specialized in anti-terrorism and physical security, and I'm an active shooter expert. I'm employed by TEACS as a Department of Homeland Security instructor on infrastructure protection around the U.S. Certifications and training include NCIS, active shooter response, advanced law enforcement rapid response training. I'm an instructor for civilian response to active shooter events and an active attack event response leadership graduate. Texas House Bill 1009, also known as the Protection of Texas Children Act, gave us the Texas School Marshal Program, which is in place as it currently stands now. It's administered by the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, or TCOL, who is a state certifying entity that every law enforcement officer in the state is required to serve and go through them. This program is 80 hours of training, or 2 weeks. This could be for any CSISD employee that already has a license to carry, and they have to volunteer for it. The training is located here in Bryan, not in Austin. There is zero cost to our school district. They get training and strategies to prevent and respond to school shootings, security and safety of victims, legal issues related to duties, use of force and deadly force in the protection of others, and handgun proficiency. The next class in Bryan starts June 17th, with more in the late summer and fall. Texas state grant covers the psychological exam of these employees. Training includes ammunition, licensing, and recertification every 2 years, and they must purchase their own weapon. So again, there's no cost to the school district. 3 weeks ago, after the shooting in Uvalde, the governor urged our Texas Education Commissioner, Mike Morath, to find more ways to get school districts to increase school marshals and school resource officers. There is no limit to how many we can have on each school campus. Other districts that use it, as you remember, Santa Fe, 4 years ago, they had a shooting. They had the program adopted, but they had not implemented it. How many of those kids would be alive today going to college or starting their families? Also, the Lovejoy, ISD, and Allen, others, but it's up to the school districts to advertise whether they do it or not. Only the principals, SROs, local law enforcement, and the school board are allowed to know who those school marshals are, unless they choose to identify themselves. Other options are the school guardian program, which is an unofficial program, but that doesn't involve state licensing or renewal. It is a cost that will cost the school district. That program is less regulated and more expensive, but better than what we have now, which is 0 to 1 school resource officers who aren't always there. Sometimes it's just somebody checking in. Whatever we do, I recommend sending these school marshals or anybody else through CPR, advanced life saving, and stop the bleed training. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Carrie Morgan.
So my name is Carrie Morgan, and I appreciate Chris's comments tonight. I come as one who has been in the school district for a while from various perspectives. And while I don't have stats that need to be shared tonight, I did want to offer myself up as kind of an in-depth personal anecdote or survey. I have been with the same instructional assistants for my children since 2010 in many of the ways from the dual language program. And I have children at College Hills, Oakwood, AMCMS, and AMCHS this year. And I myself am a paraprofessional at Riverbend in the motor lab. And at one point, you will hear a soapbox from me on motor labs and how much they're very needed. And coming from private pre-K, I'm very, very much adjusted to working at the same wage point as my teenagers. In fact, I have teenagers who make more than I do. And I speak tonight for a sense of urgency regarding not just our teachers, but all of our employees' salaries. Because I've been around for so long, and when you're around the same people for that long, and we're in it together, in the trenches together, they're very comfortable in what they say. And while I cannot share a decade's worth of anecdotes, there is a very significant uptick in stress and frustrations and difficulties that are significant. And the current salary or pay rate is it feels like I'm standing together with them on a riverbank that's eroding away in a flood. And I don't know how long this flood will continue to batter, and I do not know how long the bank will last. But I do know that as I attempt to form relationships with the other wage earners, whether they be custodians or pre-K assistants, as I work with them in the motor lab, side by side for hours on end, things are different, and it's changing, and it's very, very urgent that all of us in this room advocate for an increase in salary for teachers and pay raises for all involved in education, all the way down to our bus drivers and our custodians and all of us who are working together. Thank you.
Thank you. That will bring us to item F, consent agenda, and those items are item G, item J4 through J16, and item K3. Any discussion?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Hall. We have a second by Mr. Ben. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. That'll bring us to item H, H1, consideration and discussion regarding the CSISD strategic plan, including a review of progress in 2021-22 and plans for continued implementation in 22-23. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Horak and board members. As our program report this month, we'll kind of give an overview or an update on the work accomplished with our strategic plan in 21-22 and kind of a peek forward as into the specific results associated with the goals in our strategic plan for year 2, which is 22-23. So it's going to be kind of a tag team effort. I believe Dr. Perry is starting us off, and then she'll hand off to Ms. Parkerson, and then somewhere in there, Mr. Mann's going to have a few words as well. So, Dr. Perry?
Thank you, Mr. Martindale. Mr. Horak, members of the board, I am very excited to bring to you all this evening more information about where we've been and where we're going with strategic planning and implementation here in College Station ISD. As mentioned earlier by Ms. McAdams, we had an opportunity to come together and really focus on this as a strategic design team, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that and then really focus in on what year 2 will bring. But before we do that, I want to do a quick refresher or recap on what led us down this path. And so what you see here is our original strategic design team that met, I believe, 7 or 8 days throughout spring of 2021. And that team worked very, very hard to utilize the feedback that we gathered from our community through multiple sources and really redefine what things are going to look like in College Station ISD, not just for the next year, but for the next 3 to 5 years. And so you can see our transformed vision statement there on the front cover. I know it's a little hard to read in the lighting, but CSISD learners, teachers, leaders in the community collaborate to foster lifelong learning through relevant growth opportunities and meaningful relationships. Together, we prepare our learners for their own unique success each life, each day, each hour. And so that hearkening to the past and planning for the future really began when we gathered that feedback, and you all as a board of trustees re-envisioned those core beliefs and commitments and defined what it is that you all believe as a board, and as a result, what we will do as a district across those different beliefs. Then as a design team, we came together and we worked to develop portraits. So what would it look like in that visionary place where we are moving towards for our learners, for our educators, for our leaders? And then what outcomes do we expect and do we strive towards for our learners as they achieve those goals and achieve the success and really learn forward and have lots of different opportunities, both in their school as well as their community, to develop the kinds of skills so that they will be career, college, or military ready. Ultimately, that team developed and the board adopted the 6 goals that you see before you. These are big aspirational goals that we do believe will carry us forward for the next 3 to 5 years. And as we move into looking at those specific results, you'll see more details about how we will go about enhancing those instructional practice and elevating the outcomes for our historically underperforming groups, as well as strengthening those relationships within the district, as well as in the community, and then finally with our technology. So moving into year 1 progress, you can see here a few images of our very hardworking design team. We had a lot of folks that were able to return and join us from that year 1 team, and then we were able to supplement to make sure that we had coverage and representation from all of our campuses, and worked very hard throughout an entire morning to review the progress and provide input on year 2, which you'll have an opportunity to hear next.
Good evening. I'm excited to be here tonight to talk to you about the first 2 goals, which are really our instructionally focused goals. For year 1, the design team chose specific results 1.1, which really focuses in on the variety of learning experiences that we offer our learners and making sure that we're meeting their variety of needs. And just to orient y'all to the format here, the bulleted items then are the action steps for that particular specific result for year 1. And you'll notice the key down at the bottom indicates what has been accomplished versus the items that may be discontinued as we work our way through the strategic plan, excuse me. So for goal 1, specific results 1.1, we really focused in on the CSISD framework for success. This is the meat behind the pretty logo, if you will. So you noticed this year, you may have seen the logo that is just above Mr. Decker's head there on the left even, the puzzle pieces. Those phases represent different pieces of the learning innovation framework about what we want to have happen in our classrooms if we were going to really truly achieve a unique success for each of our learners. And so we made significant progress here, including developing the learner and educator protocols behind those. Each of our campuses had an opportunity to select one of those 6 phases that they thought best aligned with their campus's unique needs, and created an individual plan for their campus as far as how they were going to really focus in on that instructional phase of the framework and implement those plans. We also, as a district, had an opportunity to take a look at our instructional resources and determine which of those we'd like to continue to use and which may need to be strategically abandoned to add some clarity to the resource pool that we have, and we made significant strides there. Additionally, we also have begun the work of integrating the framework for success into stage 3, which is really the lesson planning facet of our curriculum documents. And as you see, as we look toward the future, most of those action steps are continued in a new way heading into year 2. So as we go into year 2 with 1.1, each campus has been asked to add a second phase that extends their instructional focuses for the framework for success. Based on their individual data. And then we as a C&I department are working on developing content area specific supports that integrate the framework for success into those best practices. So we're continuing this work in this area. The original year 1 focus was on some sample lessons. As we got really into the work, we decided it'd be better to align and be more user-friendly for our teachers rather than having sample lessons. Here are the tools where you can go find it in what we have, if you will, a roadmap built in. So you'll see that change there. In addition, the design team with the feedback from our C&I department determined to go ahead and pull forward 2 other specific results, 1.2 and 1.3 into our focus. And we're really going to start the foundational work in these 2 areas. So for example, with 1.2 of creating a system of personalized professional learning for all educators, we will not end the school year with that fully being in place. However, we're laying the foundation through these initial action steps to be ready to progress toward that work. And so much of that really relies on the Power School professional learning system that we have adopted this year and are putting into place through the summer, and really focusing on providing individual growth for teachers as part of our T-TEST framework, and individual growth for our leaders throughout the district by beginning the CSISD leadership definition work with our campus administrators as our initial rollout of that as well. 1.3 really focuses in on processes for student individual goal setting and progress monitoring. And so we want to make sure that as a system, we have a great depth of understanding of all of our campus administrators of how we can effectively use our data to build our learner experiences. And so that's really our main focus in this area. But you'll notice some annotations here of DIP versus CIP. And so the DIP items are our district improvement plan items. The CIP notation means that they are included in our campus improvement plans as well. And for specific results 1.3, you have an additional call out. Some of our campuses have already made significant progress on individual student goal setting, student-led conferences, for example, and things like that. And so they have that ability and autonomy in their own campus improvement plans to celebrate that work and call it out. So we'll be able to see it in that way as well. Okay. Goal 2 really focuses in on elevating our academic outcomes of our historically underperforming student groups. And so for specific result 2.1, we have been working toward building a comprehensive multi-tiered system of supports program. And so this integrates both academic and behavioral RTI, as well as all of our special populations and programs, such as our gifted learners and so forth, as we're looking from this lens. And so at this point, we have trained our key stakeholders on the new MTSS software that we have brought on, which is Performance Matters. It is another Power School company. Whenever we chose to bring on Performance Matters, it was a big lift. We have really had the opportunity to build this program from scratch and determine what data feeds this system. And so we have spent a considerable amount of time this year building things behind the scenes. At this point, campus administrators, interventionists, the leadership teams at our comprehensive high schools, for example, have had an opportunity to really start dabbling in the data that you can pull from that software. We're also using our summer programs to practice our intervention tools within it so that we can build on that through the next school year. And really the focus on this is to have continuity of care from K to 12, where we're making sure we're sharing the information about students as they progress through our system, whether they have enrichment needs or intervention needs, us being able to see that as they move. So we're moving past the days of the hand delivery that I used to have as a high school principal of the boxes that arrive from the 3 middle schools to it being integrated into Performance Matters. And so that's really exciting. We also have a handbook created for elementary and for secondary. We are working to integrate the software into that handbook as well. And we're working toward that calibration. We have celebrated a lot of autonomy as a system. And so because of that, we have all of our campuses, all 19, are in a little bit different place. And so we're really working hard to calibrate what we're doing at each campus as well, which really leads us into year 2. I'm going to go a little bit out of order here. I apologize. Where we will continue this. So I wanted y'all to see that continuity. We will really press in on Performance Matters and our work there. We're also going to work I'll work with Dr. Hickman to align our practices K-12 instead of having 2 separate handbooks to make sure that that is aligned and focused for MTSS. The second year 1 goal here related to goal 2 is about increasing our student achievement by implementing research-based best practices in Tier 1 instruction in all classrooms. So that pretty logo that we talked about that has the phases, it also is linked to instructional best practices that are rooted in research. And so each campus has had an opportunity to choose a best practice that they're focusing on, and that really comes in here. So we've determined that through our partnership with Engage to Learn. We're working to integrate that further this year. And we also had some walkthrough training with the Dana Center at the University of Texas, and use that training then for us as an administrative team to revisit our walkthrough and the way we give teachers feedback as a system, and are changing that as we head into next year to better be able to monitor the best practices and how we're using the framework for success, in addition to those T-test parameters that we have with teacher evaluation. So you'll see that in year 2, once again, we're carrying 2.2 forward here, and really the focus of that is bettering our instructional practices in the classroom that are good for all kids, but specifically targeting those that will help us serve our struggling learners the most as we move forward. Once again, you can see the things that are in the district improvement plan versus the campus improvement plan here for these 2 goals as well. All right, Mr. Glenwinkle? Not yet, sorry, Dr. Perry.
It truly takes a village, and you'll see a number of us this evening. So goal 3 is really about enriching experiences through strengthening relationships. And for the first year, we actually began with the specific action 3.3, which might seem a little less logical than otherwise, but it did make sense that we would really start in that year 1 with promoting that engaging relationship. And each campus a year ago in their campus improvement planning process developed a plan for community outreach during the school year, and then they identified and participated also in a community service project. And so it was incredible to get to hear about all of the different types of projects that happened both on campuses and out in community centers such as assisted living facilities, and on campuses where lots of folks were coming in and students were learning alongside community partners and each other. For year 2, we will absolutely continue that. That was a huge success within 3.3, but we added at the bottom of the slide the sharing piece, because as we heard about all these incredible things, folks in the room said, gosh, we didn't know that was happening. And so we wanted to be very specific and clear that, hey, these good things that are happening need to be shared out with not only your campus, but the broader CSISD community. Additionally, we're adding in that 3.1 of training and ongoing support for staff and promoting those positive relationships. And during the planning process, we really focused in on year 1 needs to be about assessing what those needs and how we can best go about it. We don't want to just jump into it. We don't want to pick a program or start doing something and then find that it really does not meet our needs. And so we're going to really take some time to identify what those needs are and potential training opportunities so that by the time we are ready for the next year of implementation in 3.1, we'll really have a solid plan for what that would be and what that would look like as we were to roll it out. Mr. Glenwinkle is now going to speak to goal 4.
Alrighty, so goal 4, a little bit different than the others in that this is kind of something that is being started from scratch. What we did this past year was really kind of just get a small group of people together to try to wrap our brain around the whole concept of intentional partnerships. And what I mean by that is there are all sorts of partnerships that are around a school district, around a campus, whether it be volunteering, whether it be monetary partnerships, whether it be partnerships where entities like Texas A&M or Blend come in and help our students learn something. And so that's kind of where we kind of laid the groundwork for this next year where, and when I say we, I'm talking about myself, Ms. Benden, who's the director of our Education Foundation, Mr. Ross, who is our director of Career and Technical Education, and we did have our one of our HR directors, Dr. Dixon, but he is gone. So Josh, congratulations, you're now on our committee. Mr. Simak, our Director of Human Resources. But going forward into next year, what we really want to try to do is get a grasp on the things that we already have going on in our school district as far as partnerships. And we really want to try to categorize these into 4 different categories, whether it be academic, volunteerism, monetary support, or actually College Station ISD giving back to the community. When we talk about intentional and meaningful partnerships, it's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street. And so that's why we included giving back to the community. And so with that being said, the goal is to quantify what we have, determine what we need, and from there, the following year, go forward and try to create the partnerships that are lacking for our school district and give us a little better mechanism to support the partnerships that are already there.
And with that, we'll transition into Goal 5 and 6, which are both related to technology. The first of which, Goal 5, is related to the ecosystem, meaning the back end, the devices, the safe and secure digital environment. And so year one, we really focused in on the specific result 5.1 to increase the number of devices. And thanks to the generosity of our CSISD voters, we were able to include in last November's bond $4.525 million specifically for devices. That would include things like tablets, laptops, teacher laptops. And so once we knew that we had funding for this, we were able to make substantial progress. And as you all know, as a board, you've approved a number of purchases. And by the beginning of the new school year, we'll have thousands of additional devices deployed and infused into those classrooms. And so really what's left on 5.1 is to create that multi-year plan. Now that we know exactly what we have that's actually functional with the instructional materials that we need on them, we need to have a plan to continue to purchase those and certainly to continue deploying those as they're received throughout the next school year. We are adding in 5.2 and 3. 5.2 will really focus in on improving Wi-Fi, and part of Proposition A of that same November 2021 bond included just under $14 million to assist in improving our infrastructure, including Wi-Fi. And so we absolutely also have the funds to do this and have begun that process of really evaluating what is needed, where it is needed, and with the goal of ensuring that no matter where you are in our CSISD buildings, as a student or as a teacher, that you have very good access to the Wi-Fi so that you're able to use all of those new devices successfully. And then finally, safety and security is of course always a concern, especially when it comes to data privacy and ensuring that we are making our infrastructure secure, but also that our human behavior is improved so that we don't click things that we shouldn't, that introduce threats to our systems. And so we are working diligently with a third party to improve our stance in terms of any potential cybersecurity risks as well. Goal 6 really focuses on the learner experience in using that technology. I know you've all have had the opportunity to see Ms. Stephanie Ryan a number of times. This is her area of expertise and passion, and she shares with you all the amazing things that we can do to really and truly transform the educational experience, not just place a device in a student's hand to replace a teacher, but to create experiences that would not otherwise be possible. And that's what we're talking about when we see this SAMR model, or substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition, of using that device well beyond just basic capabilities in transforming what instruction looks like through its use. So some of these aspects will continue in 6.1 in year 2, in addition to just our administrators having a much deeper understanding of that SAMR model. We have now incorporated some of those aspects into our walkthrough form so that teachers will get good feedback to help them see from their administrators' perspectives how they are doing with that and how they can continue to improve. Then additionally, we will be creating and implementing that comprehensive instructional technology plan. This is really where we're focusing in on digital citizenship for our students, for our teachers, and making sure that we have embedded that into our curriculum as part of the overall experience for our students K-12. And then lastly, the sufficient instructional technology resources and support. You all approved, I believe back in March, the purchase of interactive displays throughout the district. We have purchased 844 of those to be exact, and so we are in the process of getting those installed over the course of the next several months, and those will be at all except for our 4 newest campuses who already have those displays. But of course, we'll need to provide the training and support to make sure we're maximizing the use of those resources as well.
Right, and as we shared the last time I was up here talking with you, that we were going to present to the Strategic Design Committee the proposal of replacing our portrait of a leader with our leadership definition. And whenever we walked them through that and showed it to them, they were very excited. It really wasn't much of a discussion because they saw that this is just very robust, right? It's hard to read here, but I shared it with you guys last month. And so we have 5 sessions this year with Holdsworth, and so myself, Molly, and Tiffany will be going down there. Mr. Martindale has his own sessions. Some of them overlap, some of them do not. But the goal for us in working with Holdsworth is for us to learn with them and from them how to make this part of what we do in CSISD. Now that we've created this leadership definition, we're going to be using this in action with our leaders, starting with our principals and then beginning to work with our assistant principals. And I will also be integrating this into the different leadership development programs that we have as a district. So it's going to be very exciting, and I can't wait to be able to share great news with all of you as we go through the year next year.
And that brings us to our next steps that we've alluded to throughout tonight's presentation. As a reminder, you all did vote to extend those existing 6 goals into the new school year back in May. And so, of course, our district improvement plan is based on those 6 goals with those year 2 specific results and action steps that we reviewed this evening. During our Summer Administrative Leadership Institute several weeks ago, we really focused our time on these exact pieces, and campuses had an opportunity to really work through their campus improvement plans. They are, of course, fully aligned with the goals, with the district improvement plan, as well as those specific campus needs that Tiffany spoke to. And then finally, you all will have an opportunity to consider approval of the campus plans in early fall of 2022. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have or receive any comments.
I can't go on without making some comments on this because it's just been such a big part of the last year, and an exciting part in many ways, but also I think what you just went through shows how much work has been happening behind the scenes over the last year, and that's really the important part. I love when I show up at a committee meeting, whether it was, the Education Foundation earlier this month or some other committee meeting, and we start with this, right? We start by talking about what is the overall strategic plan for the district, and how can whatever we're working on and discussing, how can it fit underneath that umbrella? So I love seeing that. I also recognize, especially, we got a lot of information this week because we're going to go in and evaluate our superintendent. I mean, a lot of what's in our, it's on the agenda, so I can say that, but a lot of what's in that evaluation is linked to the strategic plan, and that's how it should be. I think we discussed that when we, as a board, we agreed that. So, and because it's what we believe we need to do as a district. But I was also saying that because we also got to see a lot of even more than this, about what's been going on. There is a lot, so much behind it. And to me, it also shows how it is going to take much more than 1 year, than 2, 3, 4 years to get so much done. And I love that there's a lot of language involved, a lot of lingo, and new terminology that the district's having to learn. So it's just a major endeavor, but kudos to all the team that is helping make it happen, to continue to make our district grow and be better. So that's the gist of what I wanted to say. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
And I'll just add that, everything that you said, plus I just love the focus, and that the entire district is moving forward together. The focus is obvious. It's obvious that the work is being put in as well. Fantastic. Let's keep doing it.
Thank you.
Anything else? Dr. Perry, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thanks to all the presenters.
I would comment, but since y'all are evaluating me later, I'll save it for then.
That'll bring us to item I, personnel. I1, consider approval of new administrator contracts as recommended by the superintendent of schools, Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. White and board members. We have 3 new administrative contracts we're recommending this evening. We'll kind of go through the 3 of those, allow you the opportunity for action, and then maybe we can do some introductions. The first is Mr. Byron Johnson for the position of assistant principal at A&M Consolidated High School. Mr. Johnson currently serves as 4th grade teacher in Goose Creek ISD in Baytown. With 9 years of experience as an educator in Huntsville, Bryan, and Goose Creek ISDs. The second administrative contract is that for John, he prefers Tommy, correct? Tommy Newton, assistant principal at Oakwood Intermediate School. For the past 5 years, Mr. Newton has served as assistant principal at Hildebrandt in Klein ISD, and prior to his administrative position, Mr. Newton taught and coached in a number of districts throughout the state for the last over 20 years. The third is for Ms. Jordan Layhoff, assistant principal at Pebble Creek Elementary. Lawhoff. Then Blair told me wrong. It's Blair's fault. Lawhoff. Jordan, welcome. Pebble Creek Elementary. Jordan has taught history at Consolidated since 2014 and previously taught, or prior to that, middle school level in Bryan ISD. So, board, I have 3 recommendations before you that we ask for action on.
I move to approve the recommendations for the administrative positions as presented.
I will second.
We have a motion by Mr. Benz, second by Ms. Nolan. Any further discussion? If none, we will take vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. Congratulations to all.
Let's do some quick introductions, and if you have guests with you, feel free to introduce them as well. Byron, if you stand and be recognized, Byron Johnson, who'll be joining us again at A&M Consolidated from Goose Creek ISD. Welcome aboard, Byron. Tommy, Mr. Newton, joining us from Klein ISD, where he's previously served as assistant principal. Tommy, welcome aboard. Any introductions? But Heather, you have to stand as well. No, I'm kidding. Very good. Welcome, Tommy. And Jordan, joining us at Pebble Creek Elementary School. Jordan Lawhoff. Very good. Welcome to all 3 of you. We're glad to have you joining us in those new roles.
Fantastic. Congrats again. This is moving us to item J, business J1, consideration, discussion, and possible action regarding a resolution authorizing the amount by which the tax rate exceeds the district's voter-approved tax rate for the 2022-23 tax year to be used for district employees' compensation. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Horak and board members. With additional details is our CFO, Ms. Amy Draws, but basically, I'll give you the overview. At board's discretion, later in August, you choose to call a TRE and provide that to the voters in November. This resolution simply states that the revenue generated from that will be put strictly toward employee compensation. With more details, Ms. Strauss.
Well said, Mr. Martindale. Thank you. As mentioned, this is a resolution that looks to the purpose of the funds of a VATRE should you decide to call that in support of compensation for our staff. If you were here for the workshop earlier, you saw some details on the budget that really laid out 2 compensation plans. The first compensation plan would be what we call Plan A, which would be a 2% increase, either based on base salary or midpoint, depending on the job classification, and supported with the original budget with the tax rate as it is right now with the compression. If the board so chose to call a VATRE, which would be a tax rate in excess of the current voter-approved rate, then this resolution is mainly just a communication tool that says it's your intent to use those funds for compensation, which would add additional amounts of either 4% for all employees, whether that be their previous salary or midpoint, and 2% for administrators. So those were gone over in detail in the workshop. But please know this is clearly a communication tool. The resolution in no way states that you have called it. It's certainly something that we have to continue to talk about and bring forth at the appropriate time in August. So I'll ask for your consideration and any questions you might have later.
I move to approve the resolution regarding a voter approval tax rate election to fully fund the employee compensation plans A and B for 2022-2023.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hall, second by Mr. Decker. Any discussion? Go ahead.
I'd like to say, Mr. Oz, Ms. Martindale, it was brought up in the Basilis polling about the trust that the community has in the administration's ability to fiscally manage a very tight budgetary environment. I think creative solutions like this and the transparency of saying this is what we're going to use it for, so we're not just asking for tax dollars. We're saying what it's going towards. I think the Plan A, Plan B shows that creativity, and it's a very fiscally responsible way to not increase our deficit, but reward the teachers. And I think more importantly, it's a way that we can, as mentioned by speakers earlier, recruiting and retaining talent is what's critical. And I think the irony is, as Mr. Odds mentioned in the Eagle earlier this week, the state puts restrictions on us, but our growth is a product of so much of our community. I moved here for the school districts, but then we as a school district are not able to reap those benefits. The property taxes go up because the values go up. The values go up because people want to move here, and we need to be able to recoup. And I think this is a good start to trying to do that without increasing our deficit. And it is, as was mentioned earlier, it's about recruiting and retaining talent. We're not just competing with other school districts, we're competing with the private sector. And honestly, we can't compete. When you look at the talent in the school district, that talent is equally valuable to the private sector as well. Simple case study, once we get in a hole, we can't buy back good talent once we lose good talent. For a case in point, look at FSU's football record since 2017. And I'll let everybody ponder on that. But I think it's not just we're not just rewarding and recognizing the effort. It is about the innumerable, immeasurable impact that our teachers have on our students and our community. Thanks for the time.
All right.
And I just wanted to clarify so it's clear for everybody in case it wasn't, that legally we can't call for the TRE until August. And so that's why we're doing this tonight. And then in August, we'll take the formal steps to move forward.
Correct. The resolution shows intent, and that's the timing of actually calling one is restricted by law, and that would have to occur in August. The resolution is a good faith. It shows intent by the board and the district as to what the plans are.
And just to clarify that further, J2 then, maybe you should tell me before I guess the difference. I mean, it would plan, go ahead. What's the difference between J1 and J2
Sure.
officially?
J1 is the resolution that says the board as a whole, your intent of how you would use the funds that would be generated through that TRE, which is both state funds and local funds. So that's just your intent and officially stating it. So it's a communication tool. And J2, which we'll get to in just a second, is the actual compensation plans themselves.
Okay. Thank you. Sure.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. Brings us to item J2, consideration, discussion, and possible action regarding the 2022-23 employee compensation plan, including Plan A and B, with contingency upon an order calling for a voter-approved tax ratification election in November 2022 and the passage thereof. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. White and board members. As you're all aware, Ms. Strauss went through this in great detail earlier at a 5 o'clock workshop. I know she has some brief notes on this agenda item prior to asking for action. So our CFO, Ms. Strauss.
Thank you. So just a little background information. So College Station ISD contracts with TASB, who looks at our compensation annually and makes recommendations based on a peer market group. So they did that. We went over some of those recommendations with you last month, but we also went over in detail some compensation plans. The actual plan that we're asking for you to adopt is in the attachments thereof, but I will summarize some of the things included. So first of all, just to emphasize that College Station ISD, we value our staff and the work that they do. For the quality education of our students. But we do have funding limitations that we have to abide by and not dip into fund balance too far to get us in some financial constraints that will be very hard to recover from. So because of those limitations, administration tonight is presenting 2 compensation plans for your consideration. Okay, Plan A is what we'll call Plan A, is recommended for adoption and implementation with the original budget adoption, which will be in August of this year with the general fund budget. Plan B is recommended for adoption tonight, but it would only be implemented if the board proceeds with a voter-approved tax rate election, calling that later in August, and it'll be for November of 2022, and the voters of CSISD approve it, okay? Now you saw this earlier too, but I'm going to go over it very briefly. So Plan A, which is this first column, it's a very complicated chart here, or at least a lot of information, would be effective with the beginning of the employee's contract or employment agreement for 22-23. Brings beginning teacher pay to $47,725. Has a base pay increase for those on the teacher salary schedule of 2% from what their base pay is this current year. Has a 2% of midpoint increase for all other staff, professionals, clerical, auxiliary, and administrators. So Plan A would be implemented with the contract year and with the budget adoption. Plan B is contingent upon the board calling that voter-approved tax rate election and it passing in November 2022. Again, that compensation would be eligible with the employee's 22-23 contract year. Beginning teacher pay would then move to $49,600. There would be an additional 4% based on the 21-22 salary for those on the salary schedule, an additional 4% of midpoint for professionals, clerical, and auxiliary pay groups, and an additional 2% for administrators. So if both Plan A and Plan B were implemented, there would be back pay for our employees to the start of their contract after the election results are known. And then the balance of that would be distributed amongst the remaining payments for the year. That beginning teacher pay would be that of Plan B, $49,600. So for those on the teacher salary schedule, it would be a 6% increase from their current base pay, 21-22. Professionals, clerical, and auxiliary would be a 6%, total of 6% increase from midpoint, and a 4% increase of midpoint for our administrators. That is if both of those combined. I'll go over a summary in a minute, but included in Plan A is increases to pay grade minimum, midpoints, and maximums as recommended by TASB from our market comparisons, and increases to starting pay for some auxiliary and paraprofessional groups, such as custodians, bus drivers, some instructional aid positions, and the like. And we also have to remember that Also included in the compensation package is the $2,000 retention stipend for teachers and campus professionals and $1,000 for everyone else. That is from ESSER funds, one-time payment for 22-23. So that kind of summarizes it. So again, 2% plus 4, so a total of 6 for all except for administrators, and those would be 2 for a total of 4. So if this, and then plus the retention stipend for a teacher, a $2,000 equates to about 3.8% of the average teacher pay for this current year. So that would be added to the 6, but we're not including it because it is a one-time payment and not a continual annual compensation. So the total cost for this compensation plan, or estimated cost for Plan A, is a little over $2.4 million for Plan A. An additional $3.667 million for Plan B. So a total of $6.1 million spent on our employees for this coming fiscal year. In addition to that, the one-time of $3 million out of the ESSER funds for the retention, so $9.1 million invested in our employees should the VATRE be called and passed.
Mr. Rice,
Yes,
I think everybody probably realizes it, but when you say $6.1 million, that's the increase in
Yes, that's the
compensation,
increase.
not the total.
No, not the total
Okay,
compensation. The increase in compensation, correct, I'm sorry. Absolutely. So the teacher salary schedule is pictured here, current year and with Plan A and Plan B. So you can see the arrow kind of shows how that 2% and the additional 4 for a total of 6 is calculated. So we move from one step to the next. That would be 2% for that arrow, 48,144 and 47,2. That's be a 2% differential. If you expand that over to the additional 4%, that would be a total of 6. Now this is on a 10-month, assuming a 10-month contract salary. We do have teachers, some of them that are on a longer term contract, so that would be adjusted accordingly. So there are some other items in the proposed compensation plan I'd like to briefly go over. The first 2 items here, the Board of Trustees approved in March, a $1,500 hiring incentive for special education campus professionals, and the retention stipend that we just mentioned. Both of those were in March of this year. We've made some additions and changes to the stipend schedule that is included in your packet. Adjustments to the pay minimum, midpoints, and maximums for the administrative, professional, clerical, and auxiliary pay groups for market and equity purposes. Increasing the starting minimum hourly rates for employee categories such as bus drivers, food service workers, custodians, and instructional aides. The continuation of a pilot attendance incentive program. Trustees approved that last year for bus drivers, bus monitors, custodians, and cafeteria workers. We are continuing to study that, and we have. I think it's been beneficial, but we probably need another year to fully analyze the benefits. Continuation of a bus driver hiring incentive. This has been very beneficial in getting bus drivers trained and tested and through our system. We've hired several through this program. And then the required teacher incentive allotment language for us to continue and compensate any eligible teachers through that. So it's kind of a summary of some of the other items that are included in the compensation packet today. So I ask for your consideration of the compensation plans A and B as presented to you tonight and in your packet.
How far, I guess for lack of a better way to say it, how far away are we from the teacher incentive allotment benefits?
I believe we still have another year. Yes. Okay.
You don't say questions and comments, but I just wanted to weigh in with the comments that I've heard from a lot of the board members already today on this, and from a couple of our speakers. I mean, this is about student success, and it's about us continuing our student success. We cannot do that without having good teachers, right? And it is sad when you look at what teachers are paid overall. And it is also, I do believe, as Mrs. Morgan added, that I think we are at a critical time with the stress level of our teachers. They've just been asked to do so much from so many different sides. Some of it, I could blame on the state, but some of it were just things out of control too. So yes, we need to compensate them. And as we've looked at data over the last couple of months, CSISD is behind many other districts, as Mr. Fields showed. So yes, for all those reasons, we need to do everything we can. As we looked at earlier, the 2%, even just a 2% raise, eats into our fund balance. I mean, it puts us at a negative for the year. So as Minnie has said, I really think we are looking at the right thing. You've come up with a great solution. The district has come up with a good solution to start with that 2%, but do everything, hopefully, our community does everything they can to support that higher amount, so we can give something back to our teachers. And I would hope, like Mr. Field and Ms. Morgan, would continue to make their speeches in our community, and maybe even go make them to our legislators as well, because we really need a bigger pot and for supporting our teachers, you know.
Absolutely.
To draw
I mean,
from,
we do have some limitations, and we have to be financially prudent for the district and not put us in a position that we can't recover from.
Yeah. All that said, I will support this.
You know, I don't say a lot. And I thought about us having to deal with this tonight. And, you know, when I got on school board, I remember Josh and we always talked about compensation plans when it came up. And we probably butt heads more than any board member about it because, I mean, financially stable, I mean, that's something you got to be. But then it was always, hey, well, how are we going to take care of our staff? And when I got on school board 3 years ago, that was the goal. Make sure the district's going in the right way. Make sure the students are taken care of. Make sure our teachers are taken care of. And so as a product of educators in this district, I've lived it. And I don't get personal, because it's not my way, but with a spouse that's an educator, and many friends, and some of my kids' teachers, something has to be done. I think the administrative staff has come up with a phenomenal plan to make sure that the district does not put themselves in a financial burden. And do we wish we could do more? Absolutely. If I could stroke a check, I'd do it. But we have to figure out a plan. This is a great plan to consider. And considering what the last 3 years have been, I think this is the direction that's going to take us into the next 5 years. This is not about next year. This is about down the road. And yes, are we still behind? Yeah. Like Mr. Decker says, I moved back here, he moved back here for a reason, and it's this district. And so we can hang our hat on that for a long time, but we have to make sure that we remain where Mr. Martindale tells us as a top 20 district in the state, because that's what we are. And I'm excited about that, but it's going to take all of us, and it's going to take our entire community, and it's going to take all of our teachers to get us to the next level. So I think that's what we have to look forward to, but we have to do it strategically. And I think that's where this has come to light, and I'm excited about that.
Well said, Jeff.
And Jeff, to follow up on that, I want to get on my soapbox a little bit, because I think one of the issues that the community has is we talk about things kind of piecemeal at times, and so we don't get the full picture. And so, right now, obviously the district has been behind on salaries, and with inflation and everything else right now, teachers and the other employees are feeling it even more. And so this plan, I think, is a great one. But at the same time, I want to remind folks that, one of the reasons that our district is so successful is because of some of the other things that we do. Like, for example, one of the reasons we may have some budgetary constraints that other districts don't have is we have a much better student-teacher ratio than a lot of districts. And so we've got 13.4 teachers per student, as opposed to, some of these districts have 18, 16, students per teacher, and that makes a difference. And it makes it more difficult to compensate, but at the same time, it's also a lot more beneficial for our students. And I think that this board and the administration this year in particular has done a lot in the way of insurance and helping out the staff and teachers in that regard. And so outside of the salary issue, there's a lot of good things that have been happening and continue to happen. I also, want to point out that we as a board, or at least this is the way I view it, we kind of have this three-legged stool that we have to deal with. One is the fiscal responsibility of the district. And again, as has been mentioned, this particular plan will keep us hopefully outside of any additional catastrophic events like we had the last couple of years, from dipping into our fund balance to the level where we're now having problems with getting good bond rates and all the other issues that come with that. And so this would keep us fiscally responsible. We also have a responsibility to the taxpayers. And as was pointed out during the workshop, the district has decreased, the tax rate has decreased 18 cents per $100 valuation over the last 5 years. And even if we do the TRE, and if it passes, the tax rate's going to decrease again, another 3%. And so there's some, benefit there for the taxpayers. And then, mostly and most important is, again, the teachers and the staff. And I think, as everybody else has said, that the 2% is kind of a, every dollar is important, and I don't want to say it's de minimis, but compared to what we need to do, it kind of is. But that, plus if we do the TRE and it passes, that additional would get them to 6%. The stipend on average is another 3.8%. So at least on a this year basis, we're looking at potentially almost a 10% increase. The big thing that I just wanted to say is, it looks like this resolution is probably going to pass. And so in August, we're probably going to vote to hold the TRE in November. But as we also talked about with the Vassalese folks, there's going to be a lot on the ballot. There's going to be a lot of heated issues that voters are going to be deciding, and we're going to be at the bottom of the ballot. And so it is going to be vital that, and we also talked about the fact that the district and the board members and so forth are legally limited into the amount of advocacy that we can do to try to get the TRE passed if there is one. And that's going to be up to the community. And so everybody who's here tonight, if you are supporting this, you've got to, and I think maybe Ms. McAdams mentioned it, or somebody did, the community is going to have to get out and not only vote for it, but also support it. And I probably should shut up there because I'm probably advocating. But that's just the way it's going to be a burden that everybody, if they want it passed, they're going to have to follow up on. So I'll get off my soapbox. Thank you.
Mr. Horak, I move to approve the compensation plan as presented.
I second.
We have a first by Mr. Hall, second by Ms. Nolan. Any further discussion? I have some further discussion. I've realized in this 3 years that I know just enough about school finance to be dangerous, and that's not fun. But I've learned a whole lot before I came into this, because I thought, why can't we give teachers raises? Why can't we do it? But to understand it in this light and this level brings everything to reality. So that has been an adventure in itself. So with that, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Will bring us to item J3, consider approval for the purchase and installation of AV upgrades at 16 campuses from Avanex based on TAMU contract number C202014008 in the amount of $2,008,000 utilizing 2021 bond funds. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Horak and board members. With additional details on this requested purchase of AV equipment for 16 different campuses, really in the areas of the cafeterias and gymnasiums, utilizing 21 bond funds, is our CFO, Ms. Amy Dross.
Thank you. So as mentioned, throughout the 2021 bond planning process, technology was discussed and supported with our committee, and ultimately was included in Proposition A. This is infrastructure, not individual devices, which was Proposition B. But they talked a lot about the upgrades and improvements to audio-visual equipment in our campuses. Some of those might be the cafeterias or gymnasiums in our elementary schools, or in our fine arts areas as well at our secondary level. But this directly impacts instruction. So it was supported. So the technology department identified 16 campuses that had various audio-visual upgrade needs in those locations discussed. They solicited quotes from various vendors who are either on a purchasing cooperative or some sort of interlocal agreement through CSISD. Did have 2 viable quotes that were received. After analysis by the technology department and Ms. Schaefer, the director of purchasing, it was determined that Avanex, through an interlocal agreement with Texas A&M, was the best value for the district and the low proposer in the amount of $2,008,000. So it's our recommendation tonight that you consider approval of that purchase from the 2021 bond funds.
Can I ask, what's the lifespan on this equipment?
I do not know.
David, sorry. Just general, I mean.
In general, we probably get about 10 years out of most of this equipment.
Okay.
Second.
We have a first by Ms. McAdams, a second by Mr. Decker. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
And that will bring us all the way down to K1. Facilities, consider approval of the award of request for competitive sealed proposal number 2020 22-020 for the purchase and installation of canopy additions at AMCHS and CSHS to Dudley Construction LLC, the amount of $270,500 using 21 bond funds. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Horak, and board members. Here with additional details on this agenda items, our Executive Director of Facilities, Mr. John Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Martindale. Mr. Horak, members of the board. In November of 2021, the College Station ISD voters passed a bond issue for $78.125 million for renovations to district facilities and other items. I try not to let an opportunity like this pass without saying thanks to the voters for their votes and the support for this work. We stretched those dollars a long way. And so included within this bond issue is funding for some career and technology education renovations work at our 2 comprehensive high school campuses. In particular, one project that has been identified as a critical need is a metal canopy covered area at the CTE area at Consolidated High School and at College Station High School, one for each. This metal canopy is needed to provide a sheltered area outside the main campus building for construction and agricultural related activities to give some protection from the sun and the rain kind of during the school operations during the day. And a budget of $275,000 was established for this project after adjusting the size and configuration of these to best meet the needs of the program. VOK Architects designed these 2 canopies with input from our Director of CTE, Kevin Ross. And this design was put out for bid via the Competitive Sealed Proposal, or CSP process, and bids were taken on June 8th, 2022. I served along with Carmela Schaefer and VLK architect Melissa Fleming as the evaluation team for this, and we were all present as bids were received and tabulated. We only received one proposal that day from Dudley Construction LLC. The specified aluminum canopy actually came in over budget at $370,000 that day. So we were a little surprised about that. But fortunately, they did provide a voluntary alternate of using steel components. They're more readily available. And so that brought us back within budget at $270,500. The evaluation team quickly agreed to recommend Dudley Construction LLC for their voluntary alternate bid for utilizing these steel components. And you can please see attached recommendation letter, bid tab, and scoring sheet for reference. And by the way, if this project does pass tonight, our scheduled completion date would be August 31st, 22. So we would have it cranked out just a little past when school started, but not too far. So it is recommended that the College Station Independent School District Board of Trustees approve a contract award to Dudley Construction LLC in the amount of $270,500 for the construction of metal canopies at the CTE areas of A&M Consolidated High School and College Station High School utilizing 2021 bond funds. And with that, I'd like to answer any questions you might have.
I move to approve as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Decker, second by Mr. Hall. Any further discussion?
I just say I'm all for anything that gets us outside. I like it.
I'll say they're already outside. This just allows them to work in the weather.
Oh, so they already move out there. Now they'll just be covered.
Mr. Ross would be happy to take you in and see.
Yes. No, perfect. Make it more comfortable for them to work out there.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Hall. I think you're staying there, though. Moves us to K2, consider approval of construction manager at risk as the construction delivery / contract award method for phase 1 of the CTE Center. Mr. Martindale.
And Mr. Horak. Mr. Hall, this one's yours as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martindale, Mr. Horak, members of the board. So along with the $78.125 million for renovations to district facilities, we really have one significantly sized new construction project, really just one, and that is the Career and Technology Education Center Phase 1, also known as the Ag Barn. This project has a revised budget of $6.2 million and is already being designed by VLK Architects with input from CSISD administration, especially Director of CTE, Kevin Ross. So for new construction projects of this scope and complexity, CSISD has utilized the Construction Manager at Risk, or CM at Risk, delivery method over the past few bond programs, really with great success. This works best for projects, I'll say in excess of about $3 million. In the CM at Risk process, the contractor is part of the design team, and they offer very valuable input for us for not only cost estimating, but also constructability and efficiency. And as y'all are probably aware, the volatile construction market out there right now, that's very valuable, particularly right now. In this delivery method, the contractor assumes the primary financial risk of the project after they have provided a guaranteed maximum price, or GMP, for the project and the contract is executed. This allows the district, architect, and general contractor to work collaboratively rather than setting up adversarial relationships among the groups. It's been very successful for us in the past. And on a side note, unused funds are usually returned, are always returned to the school district. That's where we get back into the bonus round later for picking up additional projects at the end of a bond package. We have utilized for smaller projects or direct purchases, we've used the CSP, as I just mentioned on our previous item, or job order contracts. But in order to be able to use the CM at Risk, we have to get your approval tonight for this particular project. So it is recommended that the College Station Independent School District Board of Trustees approve the Construction Manager at Risk delivery method for the CTE Center Phase 1 project included within the 2021 bond package.
Mr. Horak, Mr. Horak, I move to approve as presented.
I'll second.
You could have let him finish. We have a motion.
I mean, Kevin Ross is back to chomping at the bit. I'm excited for him.
We have a motion by Mr. Hall, second by Mr. Ben. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. Congratulations, Mr. Ross. That'll bring us to item L, executive session. We have two items. L1, the board will meet in executive session to discuss the 21 school security and safety audit. The executive session deliberations will be held pursuant to the deliberation regarding security devices or security audits, closed meeting. L2, the board will meet in executive session to discuss the superintendent evaluation. The executive session deliberations will be held pursuant to the personnel matters closed meeting, exception to the Texas Open Meetings Act as set forth in section 551.074 of the Texas Government Code. Thank y'all for being here. If y'all are here when we get back, we'll see you. All right, we have returned to general session and we are adjourned.